How you going, you handsome lot? I've been asked to do a tackle talk on bream, how I chase them, what gear I use, techniques, and just a bit of general, hit and miss sort of stuff. So I'll run you through what I do. Okay, so what I generally do, my favorite way to fish, and it's normally gets them fired up more than plastics, is little crankbaits, right? The crankbaits is just a slow wind with occasional half a second pause. Let it start floating back up, crank it along the edge of the pontoon. So you line up, you cast down. So once again, I'm heading into the current because I've got them in coda. If not, you'll be drifting. But if you've got them in coda, you're slowly just tracking against the current and you'll bring in your lure back with the current. Okay, so the best one, in my opinion, is the Atomic Hards crank, 38 crank deep. Right? The reason why I like the deep and not the shallow under the pontoons is because I bend the bib. I'll explain that in a second. Now this is Ghost Gill Brown. This is everyone's favorite. It always works. It's just the best. Now what you do is when you do want to bend the toe point, you get your lure. So this one's a Berkeley. I also use Berkeleys. All right, I'll come in here and I'll show you. There's the bib. There's the toe point. Now, if you bend that way, so you're looking at it, bend it to the left, it'll swim to the left. So if you put a slight bend in it, when you're winding it, it'll swim against the line and it will go completely under the pontoon. So I have to drop the kids off at school and then I fish in the middle of the day. Everyone says, you're not gonna catch fish in the middle of the day. I've landed all my 5 mangrove jack this year at midday in the middle of the day. I bend the toe points, it swims in the shade. They will not leave the shade to come and hit one. If it's under the pontoon and in the shade, that's where you need to be. That's why plastics are effective. Because as you cast the plastic into the pontoon, the current will suck it under the pontoon. It's in the shade. So plastics are really good, but if the weather permits, especially around this time of year, around April, May, June, July, when the bream are starting to spawn, they are so hungry, they will come and hit this. They'll have 4 or 5 goes at one. Now when they do hit your little lure, don't stop, don't try and jag. You have to remember, just keep slow winding, just keep winding, and they'll keep coming back until they get it. And when it comes out, you normally see 5 or 6 too. It is a very fun way to fish. It's very visual. You do see the fish come out. And then the best part about it, because everyone disses bream fishing, oh, I don't chase bream are useless and I like mangrove jack. The amount of mangrove jack people that I see on YouTube that just make the most amateur mistakes. I mean, they're using 50 to 80 pound line, right? They're holding their rod in the wrong angle, they've got their boat on the wrong drift, and you don't know that until you've been railed by the fish and and it's too late. I see guys miss 8 out of 10 hits on jacks. Now this is no word of a lie. I have landed every single jack that has hit my lure. Every single jack, and I put it down to the fact that I've caught 2,000 bream. So all the mistakes they're making on jacks is the same mistakes you will make on bream. If you're using 2 to 6 pound line and a decent bream in the 40s come and rails you, that's harder to land than a mangrove jack on 30 pound line. So I practice on bream, and bream are visual, jacks aren't. All right, so if you do see one, you're lucky, it'll come, hit, go. Bream, on a good day, you'll see a dozen come out and hit, and then you see what your lure's doing, and if that lure's working for a bream, it's the exact same for a jack, but with a bigger lure. But obviously jacks, it can be up to 60 to 120 hours of just raw fishing before you get a hit. So in the back of your mind, you're thinking, am I doing it right? What am I doing wrong? Is everything right? You are doing it right. And then fishing these and seeing how these work, you just reassure mentally that you know what you're doing will work. It's just got to be right time, right place, and they've got to be hungry. Like yesterday I was driving with my mate and we passed KFC and I said, I feel hungry. He wasn't hungry. 10 minutes down the road when we passed the Hungry Jacks, now all of a sudden he was hungry. That's the same as jacks. You could just be there at the wrong time and they just don't feel like that colour. They don't feel like that bait. Or it could have just been half an hour later and the temperature could have dropped or risen, or a bit of current could have caused an eddy and then it would have been fired. So it's just time on the water. But anyway, back to bream fishing. When you bend that toe point, that's the way it goes. So I have one rod set up to swim left and one set up to swim right, so I don't have to keep changing. Apart from that, the other thing that I do is I replace the hooks a lot because the hooks do bend. Now what you'll find is with the Jackal Chubbies, they've got a size 10 hook, which the 10 is bigger than the 14, okay? So you've got 10 and you've got 14. Jackal Chubbies, really good. You don't hit as many of the small brim because the hooks are just harder to hook. The size 14, which is the Atomics, the Berkeleys, you get a better hookup rate, but you bend more hooks. So it's always good to have a whole bunch of spare. Now, if you're like me, I bought a lot of the Savage Gear. BCF had Savage Gear fat cranks on sale for $5 a pop. So I bought a whole bunch of them. Some though have the newer hooks, some have the old hooks. The old hooks are the black, the new are the silver. So the silver is once again size 10, it's bigger. The original old ones are size 14. These work on every brim lure you can think of. Is the Owner ST36BC. In the 10 for the Jackals and the newer Savage, and the 14 for the Atomic, the Berkeley, and all that. Now the other thing I do when I'm fishing, I'm going to play a video, I'll show you, is I like to skip casts. So when the wind's up and I can't crank, or there's a lot of weed in the water, so you get a lot of the weed grass in Bribey Island, and that blows through with the big currents, and you just can't fish. So I find if you skip cast a plastic and it falls down, sometimes the weed can hold it up, sometimes it can just fall just through the weed and it works. So if you like the Gulp Crabby, because everyone loves Gulp Crabby, these new Bank Junkie Risky Critters, these are absolutely amazing, all right? So they're just the same. Now they're 3-inch, but what I do is I cut it. These are made to be cut, so there's those back legs there. So if you cut just where there's a little Daiwa mark there, it's now a 2.5 inch, and it fits perfect on the 128 ounce jig head hidden weight that I use. So the weight is hidden, it's in the center. So when you are skipping against boat hulls, you are skipping against pontoons, it's not going thunk, think, it's not making a noise, it's not spooking the brim, and it's not damaging people's property, because you need to be careful around people's stuff. You try not to hit it. It can happen, but it is what it is. We're not going to stop fishing it. Other things that I use here is the Daiwa Steers popper. So I've got a few of them. I've got the MMD splash prawns. I've got an Atomic popper, and then I've got the Sugar Pen bass day. Then I've got cranker crabs, and I've got the muss. And I've got some little vibes, but I don't really use these that much because they're just too expensive and you don't need to. And my favourite way of fishing, like I said, is little crankbaits. It reminds me of when I had a big boat and I was able, before kids, I was able to go out early morning and wind on a lot of mackerel on slugs. It's the same feeling when you get railed by a decent brim on 4-pound line. It's amazing. Anyway, I'll play the video now. Hope you enjoy, and tight lines. See you later. Big for a bream. you.